I'm really excited to be here with you to mark the opening of this exhibition. So what you see here is actually the end of a very long journey, and it was about analyzing our experiences of inequality in the city. It was about experimenting with innovative approaches to responding to those using an array of different art methods. And it was also about thinking about how do we curate and disseminate and share these ideas differently, using both online and offline spaces.
My name is John Marnell, and I'm a researcher with the African Centre for Migration and Society at Wits University in Johannesburg. But I'm also one of the co-founders and co-facilitators of the Creative Change Laboratory, which we're obviously all here celebrating today. The Creative Change Laboratory, at its heart, was a learning experience. Yeah? People often make the mistake of assuming we were running an art project, but it's important to see them not just as artworks, but as activist responses. Could we take the arts and use it as a tool for analysis, as a tool for movement building, and of course as a tool for responding to the inequalities that we're able to identify and unpack through those processes of analysis?
I think it's also not just about the relationship between individuals, but how this is also about relationships between institutions. So we had mentioned this
in the past. Often we worked with very specific groups of young people, but in the CCoLAB experiment, we thought it would be interesting to bring together a group of young people with vastly different lived experiences, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different races, and to see what that brought to the mix.
In our conversation, we spoke about art being, first of all, allowing us to express personal perspective, but also allows infinite meaning. So allowing us to give our own meaning, allowing us to connect, allowing us to be part of the narrative, but also allowing us to tell our story.
If you look at these artworks, for me, whether you're an artist or not, it makes you start to think, and it provokes the way you think of things. So if this is one of Sandrine's stickers, so you start to think, what does this mean? Does it mean that we are different? Does it mean that we are interlinked? Why are there these borders? You start to have those conversations.
For this group, it was really interactive. Art is used for awakening one's thoughts. Art is also used for healing. We also thought about how we need to unlearn certain behaviors and also unlearn how we talk about safe spaces.
We looked at the topics such as gender-based violence, sexual violence, the LGBTQI+ community and the challenges they face, and how these topics are serious topics, but when we discuss them and we create awareness, do we always have to do it in a serious way? What if we add some playfulness into it?
One other point that I would like to make, to link it back to this question of what opportunity does art provide us to think about the experiences of queer and trans folk, and that's around the way in which art embraces the uncertainty of life. There are obviously a multitude of social processes that provide us with the illusion that our identities are somehow stable and coherent and fixed, and I think it is often through the arts that we're able to welcome the reality that our identities are not like that.
People see themselves differently from another person, you see. So, like, by making the space safe is by making an individual know that certain things must not be done in this space.
I think art is one, but what kind of conversations can come? What kind of questions can be provoked, you know? through the artwork.
It's a reflection of the art makers, but it's also a reflective device for us as witnesses.
So the next group I'd like to call up is the gender-based violence group, please.
The group transitioned to thinking about the ethics of art and how art may open up spaces that we as artists or agents of change may be unable or uncomfortable in containing. And so we need to think about how our art lands within community spaces where, for example, violence against women is protected by toxic masculinity, or violence against queer and trans bodies is protected by law. And so there is an ethics that needs to be unpacked and a care that needs to be established when we use art as a vehicle for speaking about or engaging with sexual violence. We began to think about how art could be used as a vehicle of engagement for perpetrators, for respondents involved in violence, and whether this is a tool that lends itself well to this group. And how can we be encouraging people to participate in these art practices if we're expecting a healing or a restorative process to occur, but yet there's still a systemic oppression that they exist within. And so there's a lack of resolve.
I decided to join CCoLAB this year to see how I could combine my art career and my activism and see where they could go and how they could grow together. And I decided to look at dolls because dolls are one of the most common representations of women that we have. Often it's more focused on the aesthetics and how women look and how they should look, but I wanted to look at what makes a woman on the inside and what burdens women and what they have to carry and what they have to hold inside of them. The idea is that people get to stuff their own dolls, but the stuffing speaks to the experiences that women go through and the implied violence that women experience. Some examples of the stuffing are bandages, which implies to a wound that needs to be bound or wrapped, but also things that provide comfort after trauma, like a tea bag, a cup of tea, or some dried lavender, a comforting smell, something that speaks to what women go through and how they can potentially heal from that trauma.
My piece or work is touching on mental health. As someone who has suffered for many, many years with mental illness, I've always felt isolated. I've never felt that I belonged to anything. Only now, as I reach 21 and my life has brought me down to the lowest point, have I started to realize that I can take comfort in family and I can take comfort in those around me. But for many years, I never had a face or something to look at when dealing with my mental illness, in using performance as the mental health, being the face of something that we cannot see, the silent killer. When you look at my piece, the emotions that I want you to feel are all the feelings that one feels when you are diagnosed with a mental health issue or a mental illness, as well as being an outsider. You're looking in and you don't know how to engage, you don't know how to come to, you don't know what to do. I want you to think of those things when looking at my piece.
I work a lot in NGO spaces, looking at social ills and looking at people in marginalized communities in terms of access to services, in terms of access to information. And so I made a documentary about the services that are available that people don't necessarily know about.
SWET is the Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force. Accountability International is an African-led civil society organization. Our main focus is accountability, and our tagline is holding leaders accountable.
And for me, being lesbian and being a human rights activist, it was just one more thing where people were being, you know, marginalized, discriminated against, stigmatized.
In school or in situations where we are taught about queer or trans people, I find that a lot of the time it's taught as a concept rather than an actual thing that people experience and that people are.
I think queer is not just who I am, but it's how I think, it's how I look at the world. I think queer is a revolution.
Queer is love to me, it's affirmation, it is compassion, it's kindness, it's just existing.
So my artwork is about raising awareness against gender-based violence as well as refugees, and I used dark pigmented women instead of light pigmented women because even though there's discrimination against race in general, there's also colorism. So the darker you are, it's just worse for you. So I'm just trying to remind people that women are human and that they don't deserve to be treated the way that society treats them.
My artwork is called Ema Uheme. It is an installation piece, a sound piece, and an acrylic piece that explores the issues of mental health, the emotional and mental well-being, and the strain that people living in impoverished and very dense areas, very lower income areas are struggling with. Green is a color with many benefits of health. I mean, when you look at it and when you engage with the green environment, grass, trees, they're all very beneficial to health. But it's also saying that there's a lack of green spaces in township areas. There is just a lot of development taking place, a lot of houses packed next to each other. It's very rare for somebody to have the opportunity to interact with a green space. Within the sound piece is a meditation, so it takes one through a meditative process, which is something that is not a norm in a lot of lifestyles. And so through this, I'm using what I've practiced myself to try and see if it could work for a different kind of people or a people with a similar lived experience.
I'm a fat person, yes. I have all of these experiences, but I never really thought much about them. But now I'm being given the opportunity to do that. Body positivity in a nutshell is what I like to call the birth child of fat liberation movements and fat activist movements from the 60s and the 80s. Nobody should be excluded because of its size or its shape or it's unattractive or too fat or flabby. It's a body, and we want to be touched and we want to be loved. We don't separate passion from whatever you're doing with me just because of my body size and everything. You're a great woman, you're a great fat woman, you're a great black woman. Feel it, because nothing in the world can take it away from you.
I wanted to give survivors a space where they can be with other survivors so that they don't feel alone. I put out a call on my social media and I offered a space for sexual assault survivors to come to me anonymously or in groups, and I cast their hands. So each hand on a rope is of a different survivor. Some hands are joined, and those are survivors who've experienced abuse from the same person. The reason why all the hands are connected together in a circle is so that they can show solidarity within each other. Thinking of like even all my female friends, I don't know one who hasn't experienced some form of sexual assault. It's been a part of our lives since we were incredibly small. Some of us, like some of their first memories was of sexual assault, and it's just a plague in our community. while dealing with this really difficult matter, I feel that art really helps and is a great form of therapy, like an untraditional form of therapy when it comes to healing. Because not all people can speak about their experiences, and everyone can cast their hand.
I must say that these are not all of the collaborators. Some couldn't be with us here today because of responsibilities. And I want to say thank you to the ones standing up here, because it's not often that you meet the artist, the creator, you know, the activist in person. And I want to say thank you so much for sharing your work with us. So can you give them one more round of applause? So we just heard that CCoLAB is about analyzing inequalities. It's about starting a movement. It's about making a change within society. And that, to me, is transformation. So it makes sense to have the DVC with the portfolio transformation from the University of Cape Town. We've got our very own Professor Loretta Ferris. Welcome, Prof.
So good morning and welcome. Your work is powerful, it's innovative, it's inspiring. You have allowed us into your story. It's your own lived experience. And you've allowed us to step into your moments of exclusion, your pain, your trauma. But you've done more than that. I think you've also allowed us to think about how do we bring about change through our lived experiences. I also want to acknowledge the role that Facebook played in this journey. This whole project was made possible through a grant of Facebook. And I think it's important that companies such as Facebook, that holds a significant amount of power through social media, to actually think about what change can they bring about through that power that they hold. And so I want to commend Facebook for supporting this endeavor. It was a unique project in the sense that it was both a physical journey, but it was also a virtual journey. I think the role that we as leaders bring is, how do we open up the opportunities for this? And I think there's loads of opportunities here, and I'm really excited about what this could mean for UCT, but also for the broader Cape Town community. So once again, thank you and welcome, and enjoy the space.
Hello. So my name is Emila Gandhi, and I'm head of public policy at Facebook, based in the Johannesburg office. As you know, Facebook in South Africa, over 20 million people using Facebook on a monthly basis, 90% of those people coming online. We're talking about the different art and expression that is in this room. If you also want to share it with the online communities, also make it mobile friendly. Last thing, third thing that I would also prioritize is engagement. And this is a form, an expression of that engagement.